Today we begin worship with original music from Jim Bryant about what might happen if we don't honor the living or the dead.
Good morning. Back from the dead. Let me get all my dance steps down first, just a minute. Yes, I am coming back to haunt you. You'll be the skin upon my drum. Yes, you're going to dance to a different rhythm from here to kingdom come. Said the thought of sorry never crossed your mind. You hurt the apples of my eye. I should kill you where you lie, but I'm gonna make you dance a bit instead. Now the only voice you'll ever hear, no matter who is speaking, is me whispering in your ear, and then you will be free. I am coming back to haunt you. You'll be the skin upon my drum. Yes, you're going to dance to a different rhythm from here. Yes, you're going to dance to a different rhythm from here to kingdom come.
Testing, yeah, okay, there we go. Good morning and welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Pat Whitfield and I serve on the worship team, and I'm a greeter, and I'll be your celebrant this morning. If you are a visitor this morning, we're so glad that you're here. We welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are, whatever body you inhabit, whomever you love, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for coffee, treats, and conversation after the service, both in person and Zoom. And speaking of Zoom, for the people on Zoom, you'll find the order of service in the chat. For everyone in our building, please take a moment to turn around and wave to everyone on Zoom. Okay? And now take a moment and greet those around you today, especially someone you don't know very well. And now we have some announcements. Julie McAllister has a report on the actions of the board.
Thank you. So, good morning. I'm Julie McAllister. I'm the board president this year. And the full board report is actually in the bulletin, so I don't have to read all of this, but I'll highlight a couple of things. Our goals for the year are in there. There was some confusion because the number one goal says to identify a new facility, location, or building for the fellowship. And that does not mean that anything has been ruled out. The point of that goal was really to just say we're making that one of our primary objectives, okay? I guess the most important thing, or the thing that we're working on, is what to do about the contingency fund. So those of you who've been here for a while know that our goal has been to have 1 year of expenses put away as a contingency fund. The question has come up of, is that really too much? We've been talking to UUA and seeking out some resources. Most churches do not put away that much. And if you look at stresses, the idea of that fund is that if something happened, we could keep going if we had no donations coming in. If you look at, even during COVID, we never touched it. So we're working with the finance committee and looking at possibly decreasing the amount to 6 months of operating expenses rather than a year. So that's in process. And if we decide that, for sure, we will have a forum after service and answer any questions. Currently, we have $117,000 in there. And then one thing is, for anybody who went to the camp out this year, it was such a success that we are planning one with those covenant groups for next year, and you'll hear more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And now I invite the auction team to share with us news about the services and goods auction.
Oh no, it's the Wicked Witch of the Northwest. I'm back, my little pretties. Just to remind you that there is going to be an auction here with a party to kick it off on November 9th. Even though the theme is Land of Oz, I am not invited. My sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, and I are discriminated against because of being wicked. She is positively green with envy, or greener with envy. I've heard that there will be fabulous items to bid on. You can even bid on customized sermons by CUUF's own Wizard of Oz, Reverend Perchlik. How about the rest of you? Have you donated your service, event, or experience? Or maybe you'd like to donate a new item, art, or handcrafted works, or homemade things for our special $10 or less table. The last day to donate is a week from Wednesday. You can even donate online. Now, my little pretties, you need to let the auction committee know you will be attending. Also, those twits need a lot of help, so volunteer. And most importantly, make your donation to the auction. Don't make me unleash the flying monkeys.
see a member of the auction committee after the service to donate, volunteer, or save your space.
We gather on the ancestral homeland of the Pisquosa. For thousands of years, the Pisquosa have been stewards of this land, fishing, hunting, gathering roots and berries, and practicing cultural traditions. The Pisquosa still live here. We acknowledge that their homeland, like that of so many other First Nations on this continent, were taken because the U.S. government broke treaty obligations and carelessly allowed uninvited white colonizers to settle in their homeland. As a fellowship, we stand alongside our Indigenous neighbors as they continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to sustain right relations with each other and the ecosystems we share. For more on this subject, please visit our website, cascadeuu.org, under Welcome. Okay, now let us rise in body and spirit to sing our opening song, Rank by Rank. The words will be on the screens, or you can find it as number 358 in your hymnal. Oh, you're doing the opening words.
Usually we do channel slide first. So I apologize for music stuff. That was on Thursday morning. I knew I needed to get an order of service to Petra so that she could put it together. And I made some guesses. Like I guessed that the opening song based on the title was the one by They Would Be Giants, and it was really by Jim. And then later he's got a beautiful song that is also both written and sung by Jim. I wanted to honor him for that. I really deeply appreciate Chris Rader for stepping up and playing the piano with us and helping us along and adding that voice. And it's important for us to all celebrate, come together, join together, and even if it's not perfect, that's okay. And then now we are here, we have sung together a single song. I call us to the spirit of worship. And I call you into the spirit and act of liberal worship with these words, the holy alchemy from my colleague, Reverend Kim Mason. Once upon a time, chemists believed that they could transform lead into gold or death into life. We laugh, but are we not also in the business of alchemy, seeking magic transformations, turning longing into connection, pain into comfort, turning anger and alienation into solidarity? Are we not transforming hope and faith into action? The subtle magic of a congregation is this: combining love with justice, creating an alloy of love to temper fear, to transform individuals into members of a community. Here we engage in a holy alchemy, seeking transformation, to find beauty in the ordinary and to make joyful living in the presence. Come, let us be transformed together in worship.
The chalice and the flame symbolize our congregation gathered in principles and faith. If you at home have your chalice with you, please join us now in lighting it. Here in the sanctuary today, I invite you to light the chalice. We will speak these lighting words in unison, and then we will light the chalice. Okay, the words should be in your program or on the board. Right? May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light us with the path through difficulties and loss to the presence of joy and peace. Okay. All right, and now we will go to our time for all ages. Let me move. Testing? Is it on? Yeah. Can you hear me? All right, good. The story, first of all, would any of the children like to come up and be a little closer? You don't have to be bashful. I'm not scary at all. If you like to see it, you can see it. Okay, good. Thank you very much. The story that I'm reading this morning is called The Ofrenda That We Built. And an ofrenda... Well, that's interesting. It's just too hard to do it with...
that tightened this. Okay, get closer here. Get right up.
Okay, now can you hear me? All right. As I was saying, the title of the book is The Ofrenda That We Built. An ofrenda is a place in a home, like a table or a little altar where you can put mementos of those who you have loved who are no longer with you. And this is a story about a family that created an ofrenda for their grandfather, or as they say in Spanish, their abuelo. And that, my friends, is the end of the story. I have an announcement to make before we have the children go to their space. I would like to introduce Mari Lyons. Mari, would you come up here, please? Mari is going to be our continuing child care provider. Just have a chance to welcome her. Would you like to say anything?
Hi, I'm Mari. A few of you might know me because my mom's Rebecca Lyons. So I've been going to this church ever since I was really little, but I'm happy to be back and helping out with the children and everything. So if you have any questions, feel free to come talk to me, and yeah.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I invite the people sitting along the aisle, the center aisle, to please rise and form an arch so our children can go to their classes as we all sing to one another. Okay. Go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share. Now go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share.
Thank you, Pat. There's always this time in our service we set aside with reverence to share life events that have impacted us in a deep and personal way. Today, the central ritual of the service is the sharing of the names of people we want to remember and honor. But we take this time still to mark joys, sorrows, successes, remembrances. It's a time of reverence, of care and intention. Throughout the month, we care for one another. Our pastoral care team works to encourage and coordinate our caring ministry. And today Mary Madsen is the pastoral care representative. Where's Mary? I know, Mary's over here. Yes. You can chat with her after the service if you'd like. Each of us has a responsibility to share only what we have permission to share, to support each other in our sharing, and to keep our remarks short. This honoring, this sharing is a door which we open to each other to allow deeper connection. I will now move the flame down to the sand over here. I love it when the flame gets really tall like that. It goes back to being this little thing. Are those any who wish to come forward and to share? If you do, say your name first, and then you can use one of the candles that are sitting here. It's a nice chance just to listen to the music and be centered. It is essential to honor and to remember the dead. I think that one of the most important things that I do is that I lead, as an ordained minister, is to lead memorials and funerals, which I call celebrations of life, for many reasons, but in part because they are not grim, solemn chances to feel grief, but always, always include moments that are funny and joyful and affirm the life that remains. Of course, Sunday services are essential. This ritual is absolutely necessary for the life and the identity and the existence of this religious community, this fellowship. And so I wanted one Sunday each year links the two things, that links memorial and Sunday worship. I want a Sunday in which we recall and honor the dead. I know you've had something like this in the past. When Reverend Laura was here, it seemed to be in November. When I publicized the topic for today, only Leroy remembered the ones from the past and called me up and talked to me and helped me gather a list of names of members of this congregation who have died in the previous years. Let me know if you think this Sunday before November 2nd works well. I like this time. I like to have the ritual of remembrance at this time, partially just because it's October, but it's linked with the ancient days of the dead in Christianity, and because I find El Dia de Muertos a joyful celebration, and one that avoids the tendency in the Anglo culture to drift towards melancholy, maudlin sorrow and grief, a somber, heavy weight upon the soul, and instead talks about life and color and light. I will say that after about 20 years after I had been doing this with Unitarian Universalist congregations, bringing in elements of the Day of the Dead, 20 years it took for someone to finally come up to me and say, I don't like that you were stealing from the Mexicans the way in which we stole their land and everything else. And I just simply said, I'm trying to honor those people. I want to honor that culture. I know it well. I've had people share with me the history of the day and the personal importance it has for them. I've brought them into services. And because in this city there are many people of Hispanic origin, many people even of Mexican origin, I want to honor and connect them into our worship. Central to the Day of the Dead, to this are calaveras y esquelitos. The calavera is a skull and esquelita is a skeleton. But there's so much more. In Mexico, at this time of year, skulls come in sugar, or they come in face paint. They communicate a certain creepiness. That's part of it. Fear of death is always fear. But they're never merely that. They're always more about life. On El Dia de Muertos, death is still scary. But the skeletons and the calaveras and the face paint affirm and celebrate the beauty and complexity of life as well as its necessity. And even death creates beauty. Every time I have a memorial service, I say death forces us to claim more fully the meaning and the value of the life that precedes it. Calaveras are also often used as a way of honoring one's ancestors who have passed on. And their floral and elaborate decorations evokes all the richness of that heritage. Speaking about skeletons, you may know about the chicken who crossed the road, but do you know why the skeleton did not cross the road? It's because he didn't have the guts. Right? Cars running by, it was scary. You may know about one of the calaveras named Katrina. Katrina began as a wealthy woman's skeleton with a big hat. She was created by the artist José Guadalupe Posada at the beginning of the 20th century. It was kind of a social commentary on the arrogance of the rich. And but I've heard people say that no escuelita, no skeleton ever proposed marriage to Katrina because none had the heart to do it. Mostly the Catholic Day of the Dead, which is November 2nd, includes cleaning and decorating of graves. Especially in Mexico, it's often a very familiar tradition. It's families gathering together and affirming their shared ancestors and heritage and connection. In some countries in Central and South America, actual skulls of ancestors are used at the start of November to honor the heritage that they carry into that day. When I started my first full-time ministry, I was in Lubbock, Texas. Texas, which is one of those places we stole from the Mexicans. I mean, Texas is amazing. You know, they were having difficulties, and we marched right down to the capital city and said, well, we won't destroy you. We're just going to take half your land. And they said, fine. When I got to Lubbock, Texas, the Mexican culture was starting to grow, despite the fact that it had been quite repressed by the dominant white culture in that city. When I began my first full-time ministry, about 20% of the city identified as mixed race, which I understood to be a mixture of Mexican and American. In my ministry, I was looking for a way to honor members of the congregation from the congregation's past, and I wanted us to be more open to the cultural diversity of the city, and so I created a UU version of the Day of the Dead. Being not linked into the Catholic or Protestant holy calendar, I could do it whenever I wanted. I wanted to do it on whatever Sunday comes right before their Day of the Dead. The Mexican version, you know, the El Dia de Muertos is really a Catholic day. Es un día católica. And what happens in Mexico is really a cultural expansion of that day. It's a reclaiming of their ancestral heritage. It was not any continuous Aztec traditions that got into that day. The Catholics, when they took over that central Mexican region, eliminated all the old rituals. And there were days where ancestors were honored and skulls were brought out, and the past was celebrated with color and light. But those all had been sort of crushed, and the Catholic Church tried to teach people in central Mexico to be Catholic. It's usually set on this All Souls Day. It's called All Souls Day. And I've always liked the name All Souls. That's another reason I do it in Unitarian Universalist churches, because it's all souls. It's very universalist. And there's always been, for the first 500 years of Christianity, most Christians understood that if there was a hell or a purgatory, it was not going to last forever, because that would imply that evil was just equal in power to God. And the early Christians said, no, it's only going to last for a while, even if there is one. Maybe God will just forgive everyone in a flash of light, and all the evil will melt away. This was a dominant understanding of Christianity in the first 100 years, the first 400 years. Universalist salvation. The Day of All Souls in Spanish is called El Dia de los Difuntos, the dead, people who have died, the deceased. And it's always set for November 2nd. And so it's paired with All Saints Day, which happens on November 1st. All Saints Day, of course, is also known as All Hallows Day. And so the evening of that day, the night before, is called All Hallows Eve or Halloween. And that's been really influenced by Celtic traditions and the love of children eating candy and wearing costumes. On the third year that I was leading this ceremony in Lubbock, Texas, I decided I wanted to include the sweetbread, the Mexican bread known as pan de muertos. So I went to the local panaderia, the one that everyone said had the most authentic and highest quality pasteles y galletas and pan también. And when I got there, I came in and I said, I would like some pan de muertos. And the woman looked at me with a strange expression. And I couldn't tell if it was suspicion or disappointment or just anger that I'd mispronounced the words, right? And then she said, we don't make that here. And I said, well, is there another bakery that makes it? And she goes, no, no one makes it here. And I was confused and I said, why not? And she said, the Day of the Dead is from central Mexico. And almost everyone in this city has come here from Coahuila State, which is in the far north, right up against the Texas border. That wasn't part of our culture. So, and I said, oh, well, I've been sort of doing this for a couple of years and I'll have to find some other way to get that bread. And then she said, you know, next year, we've been noticing something. We've been noticing that the schools have been teaching about the Day of the Dead. And people have been coming in and asking for this bread, and we're not prepared to make it. But I think I'll find a recipe and I'll make it, and next year you can buy some from me. It's a nice moment of exchange, and I continued to get bread from there for some times after. The point is that we all have ancestors, people nearer to us who have died. Yesterday, one of the things that really threw me off in my cycle of preparing for this worship service this week was that I had a memorial service to do yesterday afternoon. The man who died was not a Unitarian Universalist, but he was related to Unitarian Universalists. And there was a young man there who remembered coming into this building. And he said, do you remember me? And I said, no. And I said, I've only been there 2 years. Has it been longer than 2 years? And he goes, yeah, like sort of embarrassed. And then I said, Laura Shenham was here for several years. Do you remember her? And he goes, oh yes, Reverend Laura, he knew her. So it's nice to have that connection. That man had, his name Bruce Carlson, and he had run one of the first river rafting and river boating companies in this area, All Rivers Adventures. It was a joy to be there. It was an honor to be there, to be with those people who I didn't know at all. But we were all connected in sharing stories. And as it always happens in Unitarian Universalist celebrations of life, there are moments of laughter, there are funny stories. He had a nickname called Thunder Chicken. I'm not going into it, but there were stories about Thunder Chicken. It was fun. It was a celebration of life. And people who had not seen each other for years were suddenly drawn together and formed a sense of community and trust and connection because they shared grief together too. They had not expected him to die. He had been somewhat in denial about dying. And he had died rather suddenly after a long illness. And everyone should have known that he was going to die. And he was pretty old. He had lived a long, full life. But there was a lot of grief. And there were tears. And I affirmed those tears. We all accepted the people who needed to cry. But the overall feeling of it was the bright sunlight. We were right next to the river. There was because he had served in Vietnam, there was an honor guard, blasting of guns. And I always want to honor people who serve, because if we really pay attention to people who served in the wars, was mentioned earlier, There is a wound that comes from having seen war, seen the very face of war, seen the kinds of cruelty and violence that happens in war, the kinds of death we do not want in this world. And I'm hoping that as we continue to look at it, we will learn to find other ways of dealing with differences rather than trying to bomb entire cities, destroy innocent people's lives, and ruin the world. Instead, may death remind us that life is precious, that life is a gift, that our memorial services should remind us over and over that though it is fragile and temporary, it is worth celebrating no matter what. With laughter, with smiles, with tears, as well as hugs. And so today, I want you to come forward. So, it's late. Say the name of a dead person and place a stone in the water. I have here photos. They're down in the front, are a photo of my mother, whose birthday was back in October 22nd. So I just celebrated her life and her memory. I lit a candle here and thought about my mom. She's in there along with my dad, who is running for state representative, and some little kid named Tommy, who no longer exists really, except deep in my heart. But it's funny to look at that little kid and kind of think about him and the way in which he is gone too, and all that world that I was a part of is gone. And then also there are my ancestors, my Czech grandmother and her sister, who carry for me my Czech heritage. If you'd like to come forward, take the stone, take the microphone and say a name of a person, or silently just put a stone in the water. Let's have a ritual of honoring and remembering. And meanwhile, I'm going to read these names. Members of this church who have died long ago and recently. Bruce Mitchell, Mary Sprague, Bernice Beeman, Bob Sen, Donna Sen, Dia Kane, Randy Fife, Norm Mattern, Alice Mattern, Ruth Gardner, Ruth Mason, Charlie Mason. Do you want to come forward and read some?
Rocky Hildrum, Sonny Hughes, John Crew and Suzanne Harper, Larry Riegert, Lorraine Thompson, Ricky Stroud, Richard Gere,
Judy Trefethen, Fred Howell, Ann Howell, Dave Nichols, Dana Peterson, Pat Brook, Ed La Paz, Rosemary Faust, Terry Sorum, Gary Montague, Dick Murphy, Pearl Wolf, Steve Smith.
Marlis Barrett, Paige Balling, Carol Wechselberger, Bev Press, Verna Zuttermeister, Lois Cole, Ken Mills, Jim Szymanski, Tina Skull, and Taya Fager.
All those from the past whose lives still live in us and in our gathering, I place a stone, another large stone. Anyone else who would like to come forward, please come forward now. Let's go ahead and line up over here. Always grief is present, grief is loss, it's the feeling of loss, the emptiness, noticing that emptiness where someone once was, especially someone we loved and is now gone. But in this ceremony, we are affirming that in some way, all those who have died are present. Whether you believe in the immortality of the soul or you just affirm the continued presence of one life in the life that continues. Think of those things as Jim plays responsive music.
The offering is an ancient element of worship. Giving, regardless of the amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and generosity. We live these values in abundance. Joyfully sharing our gifts and strengths in service to the greater good is one way we create the beloved community. We live these values in abundance. We will now receive the offering. We are blessed by your generosity. May your gifts make a difference in our communities through the ministries of this church. Thank you. And now let's sing our closing song, Part in Peace. There are no words on the screen for this particular song, so please use your hymnals.
We'll extinguish the chalice and sing our usual closing song. Oh, I'll do the words. It's down here. It's right here. There you go. Please share with me, read with me the words of extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and embody in our lives until we are together again. Thank you, Pat. And now, all who wish, join a circle and sing Carry the Flame.